The stars had always been a mystery to humans. For thousands of years, people looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. Some believed in aliens. Others thought it was just fantasy. But then, one day, something changed everything. It started with a signal. A strange transmission came from deep space. It wasn't like any radio wave ever seen before. It was complex, structured, and unmistakably intelligent. Scientists around the world scrambled to decode it. After months of work, they realized what it was. It was a message, and it said, "We are here." The world held its breath. Governments met in secret. Scientists worked non-stop. Military leaders prepared for every possible outcome. Was this a threat? A greeting? A trick? Then, the ships arrived. They came silently, like shadows in the sky. Huge, sleek, and unlike anything humans had ever built. They hovered over major cities: New York, Beijing, Moscow, London, Sydney, and waited. No weapons were fired, no demands were made. Just silence. Then, on a clear morning in early spring, the aliens stepped out. They were tall, taller than most humans. Their skin shimmered like liquid metal in the sunlight. Their eyes were large and black without whites or pupils. They moved gracefully, not like machines, but not entirely organic either. They called themselves the Zilari Concord. Through a special translation device, they spoke to the world. Their voice was calm, cold, and polite. "We come in peace," they said. That's how it began. At first, everything went smoothly. The Zilari offered knowledge. They showed humans new ways to grow food, clean water, and build better cities. They gave small gifts, advanced tools, medical kits, and energy sources that could power entire towns. People were amazed. Children stared at them in awe. Scientists studied their technology. Politicians tried to impress them. But as time passed, things changed. The Zilari started asking questions about human biology, about emotions, about weaknesses. They watched humans closely. They noticed how easily humans got tired, how fast they aged, how fragile their bodies were compared to other species. And slowly, the tone of the Zilari changed. They stopped calling humans interesting. They started calling them delicate. Then, weak. Then, worse. One Zilari ambassador, named Freltok, became especially bold. He appeared on global broadcasts and spoke freely about his views. "You break too easily," he said once during an interview. "Your bodies are soft. Your minds are unstable. You cry when you feel pain. You scream when you are afraid. How do you survive at all?" People were shocked. Some laughed it off. Others were angry. But most were confused. Why would such powerful beings care so much about human weakness? Soon more Zilari joined in. They made jokes about human bones breaking, about how short human lives were, about how quickly humans got sick or hurt. "Your children take decades to grow strong," one alien said during a science forum. "Our young are ready for battle within weeks." Another added, "You call yourselves explorers of space, but you cannot even heal yourselves." Human scientists tried to defend their species. They talked about how humans learned fast, how they adapted, how they used tools, teamwork, and creativity to survive. But the Zilari didn't seem impressed. To them, humans were still weak, still fragile, still strange. Not everyone took the insults lying down. In Washington, D.C., a young American woman named Maggie Lane watched one of the broadcasts where Vreltok mocked humans again. She was only 25, but she had already made a name for herself in the field of regenerative medicine. She worked in a lab funded by the government, trying to find ways to help soldiers heal faster after injuries. As she watched the alien speak, she felt her face burn with anger. "They don't understand us," she muttered. "They think we're broken because we can't fight like them or live as long. But they don't see what we can become." Beside her, her friend and co-worker, Ethan Moriarty, shook his head. "They've seen spaceships and robots and God knows what else," he said. "What makes you think we can surprise them?" Maggie turned to him. "What if we did?" she asked. What if we showed them something they've never seen before? Ethan raised an eyebrow. You mean like a miracle? No, Maggie said. Something real, something we're working on right now. Ethan frowned. You're talking about Project Helix. Project Helix was a top-secret experiment Maggie and her team were running. It involved combining nanotechnology with human biology to speed up healing. So far, it had only been tested on animals, but the results were promising. If we could show them that, Maggie said, if we could prove that humans can heal in ways they can't imagine, maybe they'd stop laughing. Ethan looked skeptical. And what if it doesn't work? What if we make fools of ourselves? Maggie smiled. Then at least we'll be fools who tried. Meanwhile, tensions were rising. Back in New York, a group of teenagers gathered outside a Zilari embassy. They held signs that read, "Humans are strong too. Don't judge us by our size. We don't need your pity." Among them was Jason Bell, a high school senior who loved science fiction. He wore a homemade helmet shaped like a spaceship and carried a sign that read, "Earth has heart. Can you say the same?" His best friend, Tina Ruiz, stood beside him with her arms crossed. "I hate how they look at us like we're bugs under glass," she said. "They don't get it," Jason replied. "We're not just tough, we're smart. We keep going even when things fall apart." Tina nodded. "Well, maybe it's time we showed them what we're really made of." Inside the embassy, a Zilari observer watched the protest through a transparent wall. He tilted his head slightly as if puzzled. "Strange," he whispered. "Even when insulted, they do not give up." Back at the lab, Maggie and Ethan were preparing for a big meeting. Their boss, Dr. Bainers Karen Hayesglau, had agreed to let them present their findings to a panel of military and scientific leaders. If they could convince the panel that Project Helix was worth investing in, they might get the funding they needed to move forward. "This is our chance," Maggie said nervously. Ethan patted her shoulder. "Just don't mention miracles," he joked. They walked into the room together. On the screen behind them, the words Project Helix Human Regeneration Initiative glowed in white letters. Maggie took a deep breath. Outside, the Zilari watched and waited. By the end of the week, the world knew something was coming. Whispers spread about a new human technology. Rumors said it could change everything, that it could make humans stronger, faster, and harder to kill. The Zilari listened, and for the first time since they arrived, they seemed curious. Not mocking, not dismissive, just watching, waiting to see what the fragile humans would do next. Because sometimes strength isn't about how hard you hit, sometimes it's about how fast you get back up. And humans had always been good at getting back up. The peace didn't last long. What started as curiosity turned into tension. The Zilari had come to Earth with promises of knowledge and friendship, but not all of them agreed on how humans should be treated. Some wanted to learn from humanity. Others saw them as a problem that needed solving. And then there were the ones who simply wanted to test what humans were really made of. It happened on a small colony near Mars, Colony Theta 7. Theta 7 wasn't much more than a research station, built on an asteroid. It was home to about 50 scientists, engineers, and support staff, most of them American. Among them was Daniel Harper, a young medic who had joined the mission to help with medical emergencies in space. He liked the quiet life out there. No crowds, no noise, just stars and silence. But one day the silence was broken. A Zilari ship dropped out of warp right above the colony. It was smaller than the others, sleek and fast, and it didn't come in peace. Without warning, the ship opened fire. Lasers tore through the outer shell of the colony. Alarms screamed. Lights flickered. People ran for cover. Daniel grabbed his med kit and rushed toward the main lab where most of the crew was trapped. Smoke filled the halls. Wires sparked. Screams echoed down the corridors. Then came the explosion. A direct hit shattered the bulkhead. Daniel was thrown backward, hitting the wall hard. His leg twisted under him. Blood soaked his uniform. He tried to stand, but his body wouldn't listen. Around him, people shouted. Some were hurt, some were dead. Daniel could feel himself slipping away. His vision blurred. His breath came in short gasps. Then someone lifted him up. "Hang on," said a voice he barely recognized. "We're getting you out." Back on Earth, the attack sent shockwaves. Governments called emergency meetings. News outlets played the same footage over and over. Solari ships firing on a defenseless human colony. People were angry. Protests broke out in cities across the world. Banners read, "Hands off our people. Earth will not be bullied. No more mocking." In Washington, D.C., Maggie Lane watched the news with her friend, Ethan Moore. "They finally pushed too far," Ethan muttered. Maggie's hands trembled. "This is why we need Project Helix," she said. "If we can heal faster, and if we can fight back without breaking, maybe they'll stop seeing us as weak." Ethan looked at her. "You think this changes anything?" "I know it does," Maggie replied. "We just have to prove it." Daniel was flown back to Earth in a military transport shuttle. He was taken to a special hospital hidden deep in the mountains of Colorado. This wasn't just any hospital. It was where the government tested experimental tech, including the regenerative nanites Maggie and her team had been working on. Doctors worked quickly. They cleaned his wounds, stabilized his breathing, monitored his vitals. But it wasn't enough. His injuries were too severe. Without something new, he wouldn't survive. That's when Dr. Karen Hayes gave the order. "We go with Helix," she said. They injected the nanites directly into Daniel's bloodstream. At first, nothing happened. Then slowly, his skin began to change. The cuts closed. The bruises faded. His broken bones shifted back into place. Everyone in the room stared in disbelief. "He's healing," one doctor whispered. "But how?" another asked. Outside the hospital, the Zalari had sent observers. They were watching everything through their satellites. One of them, Vreltok himself, sat in front of a screen showing Daniel's recovery. His eyes narrowed. "This is impossible," he said. On the third day after the injection, Daniel woke up. He blinked against the bright lights. His body felt strange, lighter, stronger. He sat up slowly. There was no pain, no scars, no signs of injury at all. A nurse rushed in, followed by Maggie and Ethan. "You're awake," Maggie said, smiling. Daniel looked at her. What happened to me?" Maggie took a deep breath. "You healed," she said. "Faster than anyone ever has." Daniel frowned. "How?" Maggie hesitated. "That's what we're trying to figure out." News of Daniel's recovery spread fast. At first, the government kept it quiet, but someone leaked the files. Soon, every major media outlet was talking about it. Scientists called it a miracle. Soldiers called it hope. Politicians called it a game changer, and the Zalari? They called it a threat. Vreltok issued a public statement. "This so-called regeneration is unnatural," he said. "You are playing with forces you do not understand." Behind the scenes, the Zalari Concord held an emergency meeting. Some leaders wanted to demand access to the technology. Others warned that humans might become dangerous if left unchecked. Their bodies were weak, one Zalari general said. Now they can heal like gods. What happens when they decide to fight back? Another nodded. We must control this before it spreads. Back in New York, Jason Bell and Tina Ruiz stood outside the Zalari embassy again. This time they weren't alone. Hundreds of people gathered behind them, holding signs and chanting. Human power. No fear. Don't mock us anymore. Jason held a sign that read, "We don't need your approval. We make our own strength." Tina looked around. "I think we've turned a corner," she said. Jason grinned. "I told you," he said. "We keep going even when things fall apart." Inside the embassy, a Zalari diplomat watched the crowd. He turned to his colleague. "They are different," he said quietly. Not just strong, not just smart, but stubborn. His colleague sighed. Yes, that may be their greatest weapon of all. Back at the lab, Maggie and Ethan reviewed Daniel's scans. Every number pointed to the same thing. His cells were repairing themselves at an accelerated rate. His immune system was stronger. His muscles were denser. He was better than before. We did it, Ethan whispered. Maggie shook her head. No, she said. We started it. She looked out the window at the sky. Somewhere up there, the Zalari were watching, waiting, testing, judging. But now, for the first time, they weren't sure who was weaker, because strength isn't always about how hard you hit. Sometimes it's about how fast you heal. And humans were getting faster. Much faster. Daniel Harper didn't feel like a hero. He didn't even feel that different. He walked out of the hospital like any other man. He ate burgers, watched movies, and tried to get back to normal life. But nothing was really normal anymore. People followed him. Cameras flashed when he stepped outside. Reporters asked him questions he couldn't answer. Did it hurt? How did it feel to come back? Are you still human? He didn't know what to say, but someone else did. Back at the lab in Colorado, Maggie Lane stood in front of a group of scientists, military officers, and government officials. This proves we can heal faster than ever before, she said. We've turned weakness into strength. Ethan Moore stood beside her, arms crossed. And it's not just Daniel, he added. The data shows his cells are repairing themselves better than before. Stronger bones, faster reflexes, better immunity. One general leaned forward. You're saying this isn't just healing. You're saying it's evolution. Maggie nodded. Yes, she said. Controlled, guided evolution. A long silence followed. Then Dr. Karen Hayes spoke. We need to test this again, she said. Under controlled conditions. We have to prove this works on more than one person. So they began preparing for something big. Meanwhile, the Zalari were watching. From their orbiting stations and hidden drones, they tracked every move Earth made. They studied the footage of Daniel's recovery. They read the leaked reports about Project Helix. They didn't understand what they were seeing. Human bodies had always been weak, soft skin, breakable bones, short lives. But now humans could heal like gods. Vreltok sat in the command chamber of the main Zalari ship. Around him, other leaders of the Conquered debated what to do. This technology is dangerous, one said. If they can heal so fast, how do we stop them? Another replied, they are already spreading the knowledge. More will follow. Vreltok looked at the screen showing Daniel walking through a park. They are fragile no longer, he said quietly. For the first time since arriving on Earth, the Zalari felt something they hadn't expected. Fear. Back on Earth, the government gave the green light. Project Helix would go public. Not all of it, just enough to show the world what humanity could become. A special demonstration was planned. It would be broadcast live. Volunteers would take part in a controlled test. Scientists would give them minor injuries. Then, with the help of regenerative nanites, they would heal. It would be proof. Real, undeniable proof, and the Zalari would be invited to watch. Among the volunteers was Lena Carter. She was 32, a former firefighter from Chicago. She had retired after an injury left her with a limp. Now she saw a chance to be whole again. I want to try, she told the doctors. Her name was added to the list. When she arrived at the testing center, she met others like her, people who wanted to see what the future could look like. There was Corey Tommy Lee, a young soldier recovering from shrapnel wounds. There was Carla Reed, a mother of two who had survived a car crash but never fully healed. There was Carby Nate Collins, runner whose legs had been crushed in a fall. They were nervous, but hopeful, because for the first time, humans weren't just surviving, they were improving. The day of the demonstration came. The event was held in a large research facility near Las Vegas. It wasn't flashy or fancy. It was clean, bright, and full of cameras. Reporters from around the world filled the viewing room. So did representatives from the Zalari Conquered. Vreltok was there. He stood tall, expression unreadable. Around him, other aliens watched closely. Some wore masks. Others had glowing eyes. All of them were silent. On the stage, Maggie and Ethan prepared for the test. Behind them, Lena stood ready. She rolled up her sleeve. A doctor approached with a small device. "It'll only hurt for a second," he said. He pressed the tool against her arm. A small cut appeared. Blood trickled down. Gasps echoed in the room. Then, the injection. The nanites entered her bloodstream. Everyone watched. Waited. Nothing happened at first. Then, slowly, the cut began to close. Not like a normal wound, like it was being erased. Within minutes, there was no sign of injury, no scar, no pain. Just smooth skin, the crowd whispered. Some clapped, some stared in silence. In the Zalari section, Vreltok narrowed his eyes. "This is not possible," he said. Behind him, another Zalari scientist took notes. "It is," he muttered. "And it changes everything." The same process was repeated with the other volunteers. Each time, the results were the same. Wounds vanished. Scars disappeared. Pain faded. By the end of the day, the message was clear. Humans were changing, and they weren't asking for permission. After the demonstration, the reporters rushed to write stories. The world buzzed with excitement, but behind the scenes things were getting complicated. The Zalari demanded answers. They called for meetings with Earth's leaders. They wanted to know how the tech worked, who developed it, if it could be shared or stopped. Some Zalari were curious, others were angry. Vreltok stood before a global audience and spoke. "This power is unnatural," he said. "You play with forces beyond your control." Maggie watched the broadcast from the lab. She smiled. "No," she whispered. "We finally found our own strength." That night, Lena Carter stood outside the facility. She looked at her hands. They were strong, whole, new. She smiled. She knew what she had done, what they all had done. They showed the universe that humans weren't just survivors. They were builders, healers, fighters. They weren't perfect, but they were getting better. Every day. She turned and walked away. Behind her, the lights of the facility burned bright, like a beacon, like a promise. The world waited with bated breath. After the first successful test with Lena Carter and the other volunteers, the next step was clear. The U.S. government, backed by international support, announced a second, more public demonstration of human regeneration technology. This time it wouldn't be held in secret. It would be live, global, unmissable, and the Zalari were invited to watch. In a large stadium near Denver, Colorado, preparations were underway. Cameras lined the walls. Scientists moved between stations. Medical teams checked equipment. Security forces stood at every entrance. On the main stage, a single chair sat under bright lights. Beside it, a table held syringes filled with shimmering liquid, the regenerative nanites that had changed everything. Among the crowd were people from all over the world. Some came out of curiosity, others for science. Many simply wanted to see if the rumors were true. Inside the stands sat Jason Bell and Tina Ruiz, two teenagers from New York who had been among the first to stand up against the Zalaris. Mockery. "This is huge," Jason whispered, eyes wide. Tina nodded. "They're not going to laugh this time," she said. Above them, on a floating platform, a group of Zalari observers hovered silently. Vreltok was there again. He looked down at the humans below with cold, calculating eyes. Next to him stood Zeran Vil, a Zalari scientist known for his research on biological evolution. "I still do not believe this," Vreltok muttered. "No species can heal like this naturally." Zerenville adjusted the device on his wrist. "We will see soon enough," he replied. Backstage, Lena Carter stood with Maggie Lane and Ethan Moore. She wore a simple white shirt and jeans. Her arm showed no sign of the injury she had received. "During the last test, you sure about this?" Maggie asked her. Lena smiled. "More than ever." Ethan handed her a small tablet. "This will show your vitals during the process," he explained. "Just so we can track how fast you heal." Lena took it. "I'll be fine," she said. "I trust you." Maggie gave a small smile. "That means a lot." A voice called from offstage. "We're ready for you." Lena took a deep breath. Then she walked out into the light. Gasps filled the stadium. Every camera focused on her. She stepped onto the stage and sat in the chair. Behind her, a doctor approached with a small tool. "Are you ready?" he asked. Lena nodded. The doctor pressed the tool against her forearm. A thin line of red appeared. Blood trickled down. The audience gasped again. Some turned away. Others leaned forward. Even the Zalari watched closely. Then came the injection. The nanites entered her bloodstream through a tiny needle. Everyone waited. Silence. Then something happened. Her skin began to glow faintly. The cut started to close. Not slowly. Fast. Within seconds, the wound vanished. No scar. No pain. Nothing but smooth skin. The silence broke. Cheers erupted. Applause thundered. Reporters shouted questions. But above it all, one sound stood out. A long, low hum. The Zalari platform had shifted. They were moving. Closer. Watching harder. Trying to understand. Behind the scenes, scientists recorded every detail. Maggie stared at the data streaming across the screen. "It's working better than before," she whispered. Ethan looked over her shoulder. "She healed faster this time," he said. "Almost twice as fast." Maggie frowned. "Why?" Ethan thought for a moment. "Maybe the body adapts," he said. "Maybe once you've been through it once, your cells respond quicker." Maggie's eyes lit up. That could mean regeneration. Isn't just a one-time fix. Ethan nodded slowly. It could be permanent. They looked at each other. This wasn't just healing. This was evolution. Outside the stadium, protests had gathered. Some humans supported the project. Others feared what it might lead to. One group held signs that read, "Humanity must stay human. Playing God ends badly. Don't become monsters." Another group stood nearby holding opposing signs. "Strength is survival. We deserve to be strong. Stop letting aliens judge us." Among them was Daniel Harper, the first to undergo full regeneration. He walked through the crowd quietly, watching both sides. A man approached him. "You're the first one, right? The guy who came back from death?" Daniel nodded. "What do you think?" the man asked. "Is this right?" Daniel looked at the stadium, at the people cheering, at the aliens watching in silence. He turned back. "I think we've always been trying to get stronger," he said. "Now we finally found a way." The man frowned. "But at what cost?" Daniel smiled. "Sometimes survival is the cost." He walked on, leaving the debate behind, because he already knew the truth. Humans weren't weak. They never had been. They had just needed time to prove it. Back in orbit, the Zalari Concord held an emergency meeting. Representatives from dozens of alien species gathered to discuss what they had seen. Vreltok stood at the center. "This technology must be studied," he declared. "Or controlled." Zerenville spoke. "Next. We cannot stop it," he said. "The humans have already begun sharing the knowledge. More will follow." Another Zalari leader raised a hand. "If we do not act now, Earth may become a power we cannot match." A long silence followed. Then a new voice spoke. It belonged to a being from the Threxian collective, a warrior race known for their strength and discipline. "We have fought many enemies," the Threxian said. "None have changed as fast as these humans." He looked around the room. "They are not strong because of weapons or ships," he continued. "They are strong because they learn. Adapt. Improve. He paused. They remind me of us. Murmurs spread through the chamber. For the first time, some Zalari looked uncertain, not scared, not mocking, just unsure. Because for the first time they saw something they couldn't explain, a fragile species becoming something more. Back on Earth, the broadcast ended. People talked about it for days. Some called it a miracle, others feared it, but most felt hope. Because for the first time since the Zalari arrived, humanity didn't feel like the weakest link. They felt like something new, something rising, and they hadn't even reached their peak yet. The world had changed. After the live demonstration, everything moved faster. News spread. Scientists worked harder. Governments made plans. And the Zalari? For the first time since they arrived on Earth, they were unsure what to do next. They had come expecting to find a weak species. Now they weren't so sure. In Washington, D.C., Maggie Lane sat in a quiet room with her friend Ethan Moore. A large screen showed reports from around the world. "Look at this," Ethan said, pointing at one headline. "Zalari leaders call for emergency meeting." "They're scared," Maggie said. Ethan shook his head. "No," he said. "They're confused." He turned to her. "For years they looked down on us, treated us like kids playing with fire. Now we've built something even they don't understand." Maggie smiled. "That's because we didn't copy them," she said. "We found our own way." Outside, the city buzzed with energy. People talked about the future, about what it meant to be human now that regeneration was real. And not far away, a group of young people gathered outside the Zalari embassy again. Among them was Jason Bell and Tina Ruiz. This time, their signs were different. One read, "Human, strength is real." Another, "We heal faster than you think." Jason looked up at the tall building. "They used to laugh at us," he said. Tina nodded. "And now?" she asked. Jason grinned. "Now they're listening." Back in space, the Zalari Concord held an emergency meeting. It took place on a massive ship orbiting Earth. Inside a dark chamber, dozens of alien leaders sat in a circle. At the center stood Riltuk, the same ambassador who had mocked humans before. Now, his voice was colder, more serious. "We must act," he said. "This technology threatens the balance of power." Across from him, another Zalari named Zarenville spoke. "I disagree," Zarenville said. "What we saw was not a threat. It was progress." Vreltok narrowed his eyes. "You call this progress?" he asked. "A species that can heal instantly? That grows stronger every time it is hurt?" Zarenville leaned forward. "Yes," he said. "I do." He looked around the room. "The humans are not trying to destroy us," he continued. "They are trying to survive. Like all species. Only now, they have found a new way." A Threxian, leader, one of the warrior races, raised his hand. "I fought many wars," he said. "I have seen strong armies fall, but I have never seen a species evolve so fast." He paused. "These humans may be small," he said, "but they learn, adapt, improve." He looked at Vreltok. "They remind me of my own kind." Silence filled the chamber. Some aliens looked nervous, others thoughtful. Finally, Vreltok spoke again. "If we do not control this," he said, "we risk being left behind." Zarenville shook his head. "We cannot stop them," he said, "but we can work with them." Back on Earth, things were changing fast. The U.S. government invited Zalari scientists to visit labs where regeneration research was happening. They agreed, but only under strict supervision. One by one, Zalari researchers entered human facilities. They watched as doctors injected nanites into volunteers. They studied scans of healing tissue. They recorded data. They asked questions. And slowly, something began to shift. Respect. Not full trust. Not yet. But respect. Meanwhile, Daniel Harper and Lena Carter became symbols of hope. They traveled across the country, speaking at schools, hospitals, and military bases. They told their stories, how they had been broken, how they had healed, how they had become stronger. One day, Daniel visited a hospital in Chicago. There, he met a young girl named Emily, who had lost her leg in a car crash. She looked up at him. "Will I ever walk again?" she asked. Daniel crouched beside her. "You already will," he said. "Maybe not the way you did before, but better." Emily smiled. "Really?" Daniel nodded. "Because we don't give up," he said. "That's what makes us strong." Back in Colorado, Maggie and Ethan worked non-stop. Their team was testing new versions of the nanite tech. "This could help millions," Ethan said one night. Maggie nodded. "It already has," she replied. They looked at the latest test results. Regeneration times were improving. Bodily strength was increasing. Immune systems were stronger than ever. Maggie turned to Ethan. "What if this isn't just healing?" she asked. "What if it's the start of something bigger?" Ethan frowned. "You mean evolution?" Maggie smiled. "Yes," she said. "Controlled evolution." Ethan stared at the data. Then he laughed softly. "We really are rewriting the rules, aren't we?" Maggie nodded. "We always have." Soon the Zalari made a surprising move. They offered something no one expected. A trade. They would share some of their advanced knowledge with Earth. In return, they wanted access to human regeneration science. It wasn't full partnership, but it was a step. For the first time, the Zalari treated humans as equals, not as students, not as children, as peers. On a quiet morning, Lena Carter stood outside the lab looking at the sky. She thought about how far they had come, from being mocked to being feared, now respected. She smiled. Behind her, Maggie walked out. "You okay?" she asked. Lena nodded. "Just thinking," she said. Maggie joined her. "About what?" Lena pointed upward. "About how long it took for them to see us," she said, "and how long it'll take for us to go further." Maggie smiled. "We already are." They stood there for a while watching the clouds move, knowing the future was still unwritten. But now, humanity had the tools to shape it. Years passed. The world changed. Not just a little, but a lot. The aliens who once mocked humans for being weak now treated them with caution. Some even came to respect them, and it all started with one thing: regeneration. Back in Washington, D.C., Maggie Lane stood on the steps of a new science center named after her and Ethan Moore. It was called the Helix Institute, a place where scientists from Earth and other planets worked together. They studied not just human biology, but how regeneration could help all species. Maggie looked at the sign above the door. She smiled. Beside her, Ethan nudged her shoulder. "Didn't think we'd get this far, did you?" he said. Maggie shook her head. "No," she said, "but I always knew we'd try." Inside the building, students walked through halls filled with posters showing how nanites help the body heal. In labs, doctors tested new ways to improve the process. Some experiments were still risky, some ideas didn't work, but every day they got closer. Because that's what humans did. They kept going, even when things broke. Especially when things broke. On the other side of the world, Lena Carter trained a new group of volunteers. They weren't soldiers or astronauts. They were regular people, farmers, teachers, doctors, engineers. Each of them had been hurt before. Some had lost limbs. Others had survived terrible accidents. Now, they were learning how to use regeneration to become stronger. Lena stood in front of them. "You don't have to be perfect to start," she told them. "You just have to want to grow." One young man raised his hand. "But won't this change us too much?" he asked. Lena smiled. "It already has," she said. "And that's okay." She looked out at the group. "We used to think being fragile meant being broken," she said. "But now we know. Fragility is just the beginning. The group nodded, they understood, because they had all been broken before. Now, they were healing. Together. In orbit around Earth, the Zalari Concord held another meeting. Vreltok sat at the end of a long table. He no longer spoke with anger, only thoughtfulness. The humans are changing faster than any species we've seen, he said. Zarin Vil, the Zalari scientist who had supported working with humans, leaned forward. They are not just surviving, he said, they are improving. Another alien, a Threxian leader, nodded. They remind me of warriors, he said. Not because they fight the most, but because they never give up. Silence followed. Then Vreltok spoke again. If we do not learn from them, he said, we may fall behind. No one argued. For the first time, the Zalari agreed. Humans were not weak. They were something new, something rare. They were evolving. Not by chance, but by choice. Back on Earth, Daniel Harper visited a small town in Texas. He walked into a school. Where children gathered around him, they asked questions. Did it hurt when you healed? Can you run faster now? Are you still human? Daniel laughed. I feel more human than ever, he said. Maybe even more real. He looked at the kids. You don't need to be superhuman to be strong, he told them. You just need to believe in yourself. One boy raised his hand. My mom says you showed us how to be brave. Daniel smiled. She's right, he said. We're all brave. We just needed a little help sometimes. The kids clapped. Later, as he left the school, Daniel looked at the sky. Stars blinked above. Somewhere out there, the Zalari were watching, learning, changing, just like humans. At the Helix Institute, Maggie and Ethan reviewed a new report. It showed data from a secret study. Some scientists believed the regeneration tech might not be entirely new, that humans had once known how to heal like this before. Long ago, maybe thousands of years ago. The idea was wild, but the data suggested something strange. Human DNA had markers that matched no known species, older than anything recorded. What if we didn't invent this? Maggie whispered. Ethan looked at her. What do you mean? Maggie pointed at the screen. What if this ability was always inside us, she said. What if we just forgot how to use it? Ethan stared at the numbers, then he grinned. Well, he said, looks like we remembered. Meanwhile, Jason, Belle and Tina Ruiz stood outside the Zalari embassy in New York. They weren't holding signs anymore. They were talking to a Zalari diplomat. Jason pointed at the building. You guys used to laugh at us, he said. The Zalari tilted his head. We did, he admitted. We were wrong. Tina crossed her arms. So what now? She asked. The Zalari looked at both of them. Now, he said, we learn from you. Jason and Tina exchanged a look. Then Jason smiled. About time. As the years went on, Earth became known across the stars, not just as a planet, but as a place of hope, of strength, of change. Other species came to study human regeneration. Some wanted to share their own knowledge. Others feared what humans might become. But no one mocked them anymore. Not even Vreltok. One day, he visited Earth again. He stood in front of a large crowd. He looked at the people, at the scientists, at the leaders. Then he spoke. For many years, he said, we saw you as weak, as fragile. He paused. But now we see the truth. He continued, you are not weak. You are not fragile. He looked at the sky. You are something else. The crowd listened, waiting. Then he said the words no one expected. You are resilient. Applause filled the air. Maggie watched from the side. She turned to Ethan. He finally gets it, she said. Ethan smiled. Better late than never. Years later, a child looked up at the stars. He asked his mother a question. Will I ever be as strong as a human? His mother smiled. Maybe not today, she said, but maybe one day. The child looked back at the sky. Wonder filled his eyes. Because now everyone knew. Humans were not the weakest. They were the ones who rose after falling, who grew after breaking, who healed and kept going. Always.